Value science. What, why, how? This is the third presentation in a series of 14 pertaining to Objective 2 of this course. By viewing and listening to these presentations, you will access information sufficient to evolve a more inclusive, conciliant, science-based worldview, which includes 1. A method for discerning and realizing value, and 2. Ideas about value generated by this method. By viewing and listening to an earlier presentation about worldview, you learned 6 questions around responses to which people construct a worldview. Though we rely upon responses to the first 3, what is, how did it come to be, where are we headed, to shed light on value. In value science, we're concerned primarily with the final 3 questions. What do we want? How can we get it? How do we know? Let's begin by carefully defining the word value science. To practice value science as consciously, consistently, and competently as we're able, we'll want a very clear and precise understanding of what we mean and understand by this word. We coined this term to be a concise way to communicate science applied to questions of value and information accumulated by applying science to questions of value. Defining value science to mean these things is straightforward and intuitive. An English speaker who hears value science for the first time might readily surmise these meanings from the meanings of its component words, value and science. They are analogous to definitions of bioscience, geoscience, neuroscience, and other closely related words with a prefix that denotes a domain of practice and the root science. With such words, we refer both to practice of science to address questions within the domain and to a corpus of information gathered by that practice. The Oxford English Dictionary has entries for nearly 200,000 words, and their variants comprise hundreds of thousands more. Adult native speakers typically have a vocabulary of 10,000 to several tens of thousands. We use science or sciences more often than might be expected by chance, and value or values even more often. Though we use these words frequently, most of us give little thought to precisely defining them. By this omission, we incur a risk of sloppy thinking and miscommunication. With value and science, we refer to abstract concepts. While we can easily connect concrete words like apple and rock to what we represent with them, we've much opportunity for confusion and misunderstanding when we reference abstractions like value and science. We can reduce these risks by defining these words more carefully. Consider value. In the Oxford Pocket English Dictionary, we find value defined as a verb meaning estimate monetary worth and consider to be important or beneficial. These meanings, while related, are significantly different, one much narrower than other. We see this difference more clearly when we read definitions of value as a noun, meaning first, the regard that something is held to deserve, the importance, worth, or usefulness of something, and second, a person's principles or standards of behavior, one's judgment of what is important in life. Some of you may already have noticed an anomaly in first and second noun definitions. In first, value is singular, and in second, it is plural, values. Of 450,000 English words, about 50,000 are nouns. Most plural nouns mean more than one. Values mean something radically different from value. Most of us use value more often in a commercial sense, as in money value, and Oxford Pocket English Dictionary authors affirm this usage with both definition and example. His estate was valued at $345,000. We use values in an ethical sense, as in virtues. This too, Oxford Pocket English Dictionary authors affirm with both definition and examples. They internalize their parents' rules and values. Society's values are passed on to us. In a similar, albeit opposite manner, we use goods in a commercial sense and good in an ethical sense. Most of us think of value and goods and of values and good as closely related. In a later presentation, we'll examine more deeply why we've evolved language so anomalously to represent central aspects of life that we reference with these words. We have diametrical commercial and ethical strategies. In commerce, we give only what others require of us and take all we're able. Buy low and sell high. In ethics, we give all that we're able and take only what we require. Live simply so others may simply live. A clearer prescription for cognitive dissonance and inner conflict is difficult to write. Most of us live deeply embedded in commerce. We sell life for a third or more of our waking hours, and then devote yet more life to using what we earn to buy lives of others. For many, life is largely a tale of work, buy, consume, and die. Yet all of us want to be good people. We extol charity, and almost all of us give, whether by donating a portion of the proceeds of our working lives or voluntarily working directly and without remuneration to further common good. UC San Diego linguist Lera Boroditsky says, languages shape the very nuts and bolts of how we see the world. By splitting value from values and good from goods as we do, we shape language, thought, feeling, and perception. These are large parts of our being, yet most of us take these anomalies for granted. Think how odd we might find definitions of love and loves, where the former meant carnal desire and the latter devotion. This is analogous to how we define value and values, yet we accept the latter without protest. Or consider how strange we might find education meaning honing technical skill, and educations meaning character development. This too is analogous to how we define value and values. If we balk at defining education and educations these ways, why do we accept current definitions of value and values? In George Orwell's 1984, government officials imposed newspeak without consent of the populace in order to constrain thought and perception. In love loves and education educations, as we've proposed to define them, many people readily discern something amiss. But in other aspects of language, we, like the population in 1984, accept a variant of newspeak. Most of us fail even to notice the value-values, good-goods anomalies. We neglect to question their origins and remain oblivious to their consequences. Yet, linguistic anomalies like these do entail consequences. With them, we impose incongruous meanings, violate integrity of language, compromise perception, thought, and feeling, and corrupt foundations for action, as a result of all of which we reap less satisfaction and suffer more. A consequence of linguistic disintegrity surrounding value-values is inner conflict. Thinking about value, we seek high quality at low price. Reflecting on our values, we wonder how fair we're being to those who serve us. Faced with a choice between goods for us or good for everyone, many of us devote a preponderance of our resource to soaking up goods and services, and feel that we're generous if we devote even a tithe to common good. Some of us spend enough on a restaurant dinner to feed a child for months. We command destruction of nature to generate commercial value, even as we proclaim appreciation for nature to be among our most cherished ethical values. Feedlot beef is cheap in dollars and costly in environmental impact. Free-range beef is more costly in dollars and less so in environmental degradation. So long as we use value to refer to commerce, where we take all we can and give only what others require of us, and values to refer to ethics, where we give all we can and take only what others offer, we'll feel cognitive dissonance. We'll compromise doing good to do well and compromise doing well to do good. In a moment, we'll consider how to integrate value and values so that we can do both well and good. Before we launched into our examination of value, I mentioned that we were going to look more closely at both components of the word value science. Let's turn attention now to what we mean and understand by science. Just as we've seen how people commonly use value in ways incompatible with clear thinking, so will we see how we often use science in ways inimical to value science practice. People commonly use science to denote both systematic study of world through observation and experiment, and an organized body of proven knowledge on a particular subject. By these definitions, people who have university degrees in a natural science wear the label scientist. What they discover is science. The rest of us and what we learn are implicitly excluded. Many also use science to refer to results of applying scientific knowledge, as in, I love my iPhone, science is wonderful, and to refer to an enterprise comprising professional scientists and other resources, as in, we need more funding for science. When we think of science as knowledge, applications, or institutions, we may overlook what I consider to be its central defining feature: behavior by which people gather scientific knowledge and apply it. To denote such practice, we use the term scientific method, reducing science to an adjective, scientific, and we use two words containing 6 syllables in place of one word with 2. We mislead in 3 ways with common usage. With common usage of science, and by demoting it to a modifier, scientific, in describing its essence, we obfuscate how humans and many other organisms science to qualify lessons of experience and make them more reliable. These Bangladeshi rice farmers, these chimps, and this bird are all sciencing as they experiment and learn. With common usage, we also create false scientific authority, encouraging people to submit to and refrain from challenging those who claim scientific expertise. In honest science, however, each of us can challenge any of us, and success or failure depends upon accuracy of information rather than status. Yet another consequence is that we assume technology is beneficial and we ignore alternatives. For example, many of us look for cures in pills rather than lifestyle changes, such as sleeping and exercising more, and we mistake technologies and ways of being to which they're wed as necessary and beneficial, rather than as a handful of myriad possibilities, some of which may be superior. Having considered how we commonly use value in science and some adverse effects of these usages, let's see if we can filter noise from current usage to define value and science in ways more compatible with conscious, consistent, competent value sciencing. We can fulfill 3 specific purposes by defining value and science more carefully. First, we facilitate integrated thinking about value and values. Second, we democratize and demystify science. And third, reflect an important relationship between value and science. We begin with value. When we deconstruct language, we frequently gain insight by investigating etymology. We can trace value to a root in Proto-Indo-European language spoken in Asia Minor thousands of years ago, and out of which languages of Europe and the Indian subcontinent arose. That root, wall, and successive words derived from it, Latin, valere, French, valwire, and English, value, all mean to be strong. If we think of value as strength of preference, we can define it as a noun meaning what we want, and as a verb meaning to want. In doing so, we'll be consistent with essence of current vernacular, because we use both value and values to represent what we want. A place to sleep safely and genes in the next generation, friends and meaningful work, honesty and love are all things we want. When we say we value these things, we also denote wanting. With this definition, we make what we mean and understand by value consistent with what we mean and understand by related words: valiant, valor, valence, evaluate, validate, equivalent, ambivalent, valve, valedictory, invalid, prevalent, and more, that share the root val, signifying strength. By defining value as what we want and to want, we facilitate integrated thinking about value and values, both preserving integrity of language and promoting clear thinking and communication. And we join value and values, having, doing, and being. We make clear that all of these things are part of a single integrated experience, living. When we eat strawberries, we can satisfy value, having and doing, in this case, want for food. When we care about those who grow them, we may also satisfy values, being fair and compassionate. By integrating value and values, we create opportunity to see more clearly that life, how we live our days, is a currency for both tangible and intangible, commercial and ethical values. Love and money are commensurable, and we measure them each day by how much we live towards each of them. Having redefined value in a manner more consistent with sound value sciencing, let's redefine science similarly. In value science, we mean and understand by science two things, both having to do with outcomes. The first, a verb, is behaving in ways by which we predict with accuracy greater than can be achieved by chance. This slalom skier is sciencing. She's sensing the world around her and predicting what movement to make to pass through the gates quickly. The second thing we mean and understand by science is information gathered by sciencing. This information includes predictions better than can be achieved by chance and basis for such predictions. For example, over millennia, humans have observed weather and found repeating patterns. We use these to forecast with accuracy far greater than can be achieved by chance. We adopt outcome-based definitions for two reasons. First, with these we exclude incompetent or dishonest practice from science, and thereby protect its integrity. Second, we make more evident how often we science and how much benefit we can reap by sciencing more. The player is sciencing to predict how to score. The play diagram is science, a basis for sciencing. We can trace science back several thousand years to ski, a root meaning to cut in a Proto-Indo-European language. Science and scissors share this root. We can follow evolution of science through Latin scire and scientia, meaning to know and knowledge, to its modern form, science. Underlying meaning to cut persists. We know by distinguishing things, by cutting them away from much else. By defining science in terms of predicting more accurately than we can by chance, we remain true to this core meaning. When we predict successfully, we distinguish more likely from less likely outcomes. This cyclist and this spider are both sciencing. We more often survive and thrive when we predict successfully. All of us are scientists. Sciencing is how we learn to put right shoe on right foot, and countless other things. If we learn to identify as scientists, we're more likely to think consciously about how, in each aspect of life, we can science better, predict more things with greater accuracy, survive and thrive. Albert Einstein worked assiduously to demystify science and to democratize it, characterizing it, as we have, as nothing more than refinement of everyday thinking. We've taken an additional step to clarify refinement as what yields prediction more accurate than can be achieved by chance. We can use likelihood that successful prediction was chance as an inverse measure of sciencing. Chances of correctly calling 5 consecutive flips of a fair coin are approximately 3%, 1/2 to the fifth. If we correctly call 5 consecutive flips, we have a 97% likelihood that we scienced. If we call 20 consecutive flips correctly, chances are less than 1 in a million that we did so without sciencing. We may draw many conclusions from experience, most of them inaccurate. With science, we qualify lessons of experience to retain only those by which we predict with accuracy greater than can be achieved by chance. Now we can see how prediction is a nexus between value and science. We realize value by fulfilling want. We fulfill want at some future time. We base ideas about value, about what we want, on prediction that if we fulfill want, we reap satisfaction. Science is how we predict with accuracy greater than we can achieve by chance. Absent science, we've only random likelihood of enjoying satisfaction by fulfilling want. On this basic argument, value science rests. The basic value science argument is a syllogism. Here we strip it to its essentials. The first premise is, ideas about value are predictions. The second premise is, science is sole demonstrated means to predict with accuracy greater than we can achieve by chance. The conclusion is, science is how we make ideas about value meaningful. How can we value science to evolve ideas about value to be more adaptive? We'll live every remaining moment of our lives in the future. We wonder, what's possible? Which of that do we prefer? How may we behave now to secure it? Value science is sole demonstrated means to respond to these questions with predictions more accurate than we can make by chance. Like other ideas, those about value are outgrowths of information encoded in genes and of that acquired by experience. As we've already discussed, in a world increasingly full of people and artifact, a large and growing fraction of experience is cultural. That is, it entails behavioral transmission of information, teaching and learning, whether explicit or implicit. Like genes and much experience, ideas about value are largely products of chance. What apparent choice we enjoy may often be illusory. Thinking that we choose what resulted from chance is an impediment to becoming able to choose in actuality. In present human circumstances, we find strong evidence that by relying upon current ideas about value, we've fallen significantly short of long-held, near-universal goals for individual health, social peace and justice, and environmental quality. Even more disconcerting for many thoughtful people is that in some important respects we're worsening health, increasing violence and injustice, and exacerbating environmental ills, rather than improving our situation. We have a warning in these shortfalls, especially those we see growing. We live in times of acceleration and amplification. We're exponentially increasing speed, scale, and novelty of human activity. Effects are increasingly large, enduring, and qualitatively without precedent. In these circumstances, we pay an escalating price for error, one that reflects failure to adapt and casts a shadow over future adaptation. Each day, nearly 7.5 billion people awaken. Almost immediately and repeatedly throughout waking hours, every one of us asks, "What do I want?" We may begin with, "Shall I get up or roll over? What shall I eat? Where? Do?" In some matters we ask and respond routinely, even without conscious attention. In others we respond afresh, sometimes with great deliberation. In this graph, we see depicted exponential growth in human population and energy consumption. This growth reflects reproduction and energy use choices rooted in values. As humans more numerous than ever before work to satisfy want by commanding energy greater than ever before, we exert growing influence. Increasingly, we can trace deteriorating ecosystem factors and functions to roots in human ideas about value. Or, if we probe a level deeper, to ideas about how we can know and realize value. How can we evolve a sound value foundation? If we have concerns about self, society, and planet, we can address these nearer their roots and in an integrated way by evolving sound means to know and realize value. More accurately discerning and more fully realizing value are essential to successful adaptation. Human claims to deciding or choosing value are illusory. To imagine the impossible to be what we value is to reduce opportunity to discern what we actually value. Wanting to walk in the rain without protection while remaining dry is an illusory value. We can want to stay dry and carry an umbrella. We can want to get wet and decline to carry one. Value entails material phenomena. To realize value, we match information to environment. We can work to achieve a match, and we are constrained in doing so. Many choices we perceive are illusory. To an extent that we're ignorant or in denial of outcome, choosing is an empty gesture. The animal in this cartoon can go to the left or to the right of the partition. Either way, it's about to be slaughtered. Whatever difference it perceives between left and right is without effect on this outcome. Only by successful prediction can we make choice meaningful. This topo map of Crater Lake is different from the aerial photo, and both are different from the lake itself. Alfred Korzybski, founder of general semantics, introduced the idea a map is different from the territory in 1931. Korzybski observed that people confuse models of reality, ideas, with reality. He emphasized that we're destined to remain ignorant of any capital T truth and advocated that we cultivate awareness of ideas as abstractions distinct from what we aim to represent with them and work to make them accurate. Like other ideas, ideas about value are less than perfect representations. Each of us has experience doing what we think sufficient and falling short, or getting what we think we want and feeling less satisfaction than we anticipated. We imagine an idyllic solo walk along the Great Wall and wind up shuffling along in a crowd. In such experiences, we first-hand evidence that what we think we want and how we think we can get it are different from what we actually want and how we can actually get it. We make meaningful choice possible by more nearly conforming ideas about value to actual value. As we noted earlier, ideas about value are based upon predictions because we can realize value only in the future. When we value science, we predict what we want and how to get it with accuracy greater than we can achieve by chance, and thereby increase basis for meaningful choice. With value science, we expand scientific inquiry to questions of value that many people have long and tenaciously held outside the purview of science. Some frontiers of science lie at the leading edges of established disciplines. Another lies at the boundary between what is considered a proper object of scientific inquiry and what is deemed beyond its domain. With value science, we work at this frontier to bring benefits of sciencing to questions of value. We can value science more competently. Each of us practices with varying degrees of expertise in different places, times, and other circumstances. Some of us are adept in lab or workplace, and bumbling at home. Some are skillful in eating, and less so in driving. To live and die well, we hone value science practice to become more competent in whatever circumstances we encounter. Value science is a paradigm shift, a radical change in an important element of worldview. As we noted earlier, humans predicate behavior upon and justify it with ideas about value. When we adopt value science as basis for ideas about value and abandon prior basis, we change foundational thinking with which we underpin much behavior. We lead in an accelerating paradigm shift. Albert Einstein said, "The only thing more dangerous than ignorance is arrogance." When we imagine that we can decide value, rather than discern it by sciencing, we're both arrogant and ignorant. Humans have created countless difficulties individually and collectively by failing to accurately discern consequences of behavior born of ideas about value. As numerous and powerful as we are today, dangers of continuing to hold value outside of science are greater than ever before. As we rely more upon value sciencing to know value, we shed ignorance and realize aspirations for health, peace and justice, and environmental quality. I repeat here for emphasis, as we become more numerous and wield more power to affect each other and world around us, the benefits of value sciencing are ever more essential to successful adaptation. An Earth Day 2017 March for Science was evidence of sciencing ascendant. Work of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, 2,000 Earth scientists from around the world, has been stimulus for people everywhere to see power of science to predict events important to all, and to base public sector, private sector, charitable, and personal decisions on scientific findings. A growing number of people are embracing value science as a means to live and die well and contribute to others doing so. Participants in this vanguard are leading towards a future in which humans discern more accurately what we want and act more effectively to achieve satisfaction. Overcoming obstacles to value science can be challenging. We face internal obstacles, identity, habit, and exhaustion, and external obstacles, family, friends, bosses, and media. Few relish a prospect of acknowledging that we've been living illusion, yet this may be necessary to adapt successfully. Few willingly surrender approbation and rewards from family, friends, and bosses, or feel comfortable standing outside media portrayals of success, yet this too can be necessary to discerning and realizing value. We can shed identities formed with other ways of knowing value and values we acquired by them. While we typically fear this prospect, we feel liberated in doing it. Though ingrained habits may be difficult to change, we have a growing repertoire of science-based techniques for changing them. Though many feel exhausted, working at or near limits to adapt to an environment, changing more rapidly than ever before, each bit of success in value sciencing can be means to live more in harmony within and with surrounds. We can also overcome external obstacles often posed by family, friends, bosses, and nearly omnipresent media that may positively reinforce us for eschewing value science and negatively reinforce us for embracing it. We can learn to love family while charting an independent course, to evolve careers so that we're rewarded for serving in ways that reflect deep-seated values, and to become more conscious of media messages and more selective in heeding them. Key obstacles to value science may be existing value systems embedded in what many term religion and in political economy. Most people draw ideas about values and value largely from these sources. We can evolve them to be more conciliant with a science-based worldview, simultaneously removing them as obstacles to value sciencing and making them important components of it. We can better reconnect with each other and surrounds and better allocate power and wealth among us by value sciencing. Influence of value science is already evident in those who are stepping away from dogma to promote tolerance, mutual understanding and cooperation among adherents of diverse religions. It's visible also in those who are empowering women with education at every level from basic literacy to professional studies, and it's apparent in those who are engaged in afforestation and other action to repair damage to nature resulting from externalization of costs and to prevent further externalization with attendant damage. At risk of belaboring a point, I'll reiterate that these times are both quantitatively and qualitatively different from any prior. Human population is 10 times larger than it has been for 99.9% of our tenure and growing rapidly. Rates of matter and energy conversion are qualitatively without precedent, larger by far greater factors and also growing. Many alive today will witness reversal of these trends, which have been accelerating for millennia. Each of us has difficulty even imagining what such reversals portend. With value science, we have a unique opportunity to make them as benign as possible. With value science, we can contribute to evolution of a conciliant, science-based worldview that includes a scientific approach to discerning and realizing value. Even as we undergo a transformation of human society more dramatic and rapid than any prior, we can value science to get what we want and want what we get, to survive and to thrive. As we seize this opportunity, we live and die well, and we contribute to others doing so. Thank you for all that you do to take full advantage of it, that all of us may live and die well.